What happens when a beloved actress sits down for what should be a simple chat about her charity work, only to become the target of one of daytime television's most controversial hosts? In just 34 seconds, a single dismissive comment would ignite a firestorm that turned a morning talk show into absolute chaos. Rachel Shenton walked onto the Loose Women set that morning with nothing but good intentions. The actress, known for her warmth and genuine passion for helping others, was there to discuss her work with the deaf community. She had spent years advocating for sign language education, pouring her heart into making the world more accessible. This was supposed to be her moment to shine a light on something that mattered. But from the second Rachel sat down, something felt off. Denise Welch, sitting at the head of the panel alongside Nadia Sawalha, Kay Adams, and Janet Street Porter, had that look in her eye. You know the one. That glint that says she was ready to stir. The pot, ready to make this about her. Ready to create a moment. And create a moment she did. The interview started innocently enough. Kay Adams smiled warmly at Rachel and opened with a gentle question. Rachel, it's lovely to have you here. Tell us about the work you've been doing with deaf children. Rachel's face lit up. Thank you for having me. It's been such an incredible journey. I've been working with schools across the country, trying to get British Sign Language into the curriculum as a standard subject. These children deserve to have their language recognized and celebrated, not treated as something optional or less than. Nadia Sawalha nodded enthusiastically. That's beautiful work, Rachel. Really beautiful. How did you first get involved with this cause? Well, I've always been passionate about accessibility, Rachel began, her voice filled with genuine emotion. But it really hit home when I was working on a project and met a young girl who felt completely isolated in her own classroom. She couldn't communicate with her peers, couldn't fully participate. It broke my heart. I thought, this is something I can actually help change. Janet Street Porter leaned forward. It's shocking, isn't it, that in this day and age, we still haven't made sign language a priority in education. Rachel nodded. Exactly. It should be as fundamental as learning to read and write. Communication is a basic human right. And that's when Denise decided to pounce. Oh, come on, Denise interrupted, her tone dripping with condescension. Isn't this all a bit, performative? Another celebrity jumping on a trendy cause to make themselves look good? The studio fell silent. You could feel the temperature drop. Rachel's smile faltered, confusion crossing her face. I'm sorry, what? Rachel asked, clearly taken aback. Denise leaned back in her chair, that smug expression plastered across her face. I'm just saying, we see this all the time. Famous people deciding they care about something because it gets them good press. How do we know you're actually committed to this, and it's not just for the cameras? Kay Adams immediately tried to intervene. Denise, that's a bit unfair. Rachel has been doing this work for years. But Denise wasn't finished. Have you though, Rachel? Or did your publicist just tell you this would be good for your image? Rachel's jaw tightened. She took a breath, clearly trying to maintain her composure. Denise, I don't know where this is coming from, but my work with the deaf community has nothing to do with publicity. I've spent countless hours, my own time, my own money, working with these children because I genuinely care. Sure you have, Denise said, waving her hand dismissively. Look, I'm just being honest here. Someone has to ask the tough questions. The public is tired of celebrities pretending to care about issues when really they're just building their brand. Nadia Sawalha looked horrified. Denise, stop. This is completely out of line. Rachel came here to talk about important work, not to be attacked. Janet Street Porter chimed in. Seriously, what are you doing? This is ridiculous. But Denise was on a roll, and she had no intention of backing down. I'm doing what we're supposed to do on this show. I'm being real. I'm not going to sit here and fawn over every guest who walks through that door pretending their charity work is so noble when half the time it's just a tax write-off. Rachel's face flushed. Her hands gripped the arms of her chair. A tax write-off? Are you serious right now? Do you have any idea how offensive that is? I've worked with families who are struggling, children who feel invisible in their own schools. This isn't about me. This has never been about me. Then why are you here? Denise shot back. If it's not about you, why come on television to talk about it? Why not just do the work quietly? Because raising awareness helps, Rachel said, her voice rising. Because when people see that this matters, they support it. They donate. They get involved. That's the whole point of using whatever platform I have. Kay Adams put her hand on Rachel's arm. Rachel, you don't have to defend yourself. Your work speaks for itself. Denise laughed. Actually laughed. Oh, please, Kay. Don't baby her. She's a grown woman. If she can't handle a few questions about her motives, maybe she shouldn't be doing television interviews. Questions? Rachel's voice was sharp now, all pretense of politeness gone. You're not asking questions, Denise. You're making accusations. You're sitting there, knowing nothing about my life, nothing about the hours I've put into this, and you're belittling it. For what? For ratings? To make yourself feel important? The other panelists exchanged glances. This was spiraling fast. Denise's eyes narrowed. Excuse me? I've been doing this job for decades. I don't need to manufacture drama. I'm simply calling out what I see, which is another actress using a cause to stay relevant. Stay relevant? Rachel stood up now, her voice shaking with anger. I have a career, Denise. I don't need charity work to stay relevant. I do this because it matters. Because those kids matter. But clearly, you wouldn't understand that, would you? When was the last time you did anything that wasn't about feeding your own ego? Nadia Sawala gasped. Janet Street Porter's eyes went wide. Even Kay Adams looked shocked. Denise's face turned red. How dare you come on this show and speak to me like that? I am the host here. And I'm the guest, Rachel fired back. A guest you invited here to discuss important work, and instead, you've spent the entire time attacking my character. Do you do this to everyone, or am I just special? I ask the questions everyone else is too polite to ask, Denise said, her voice rising to match Rachel's. That's my job. Your job is to have a conversation, not to launch a personal attack, Rachel countered. There's a difference between being honest and being cruel, Denise. What you're doing right now is cruel. It's petty. And frankly, it's beneath what this show is supposed to be. Kay Adams tried again. Ladies, please, let's just take a breath. And... No, Kay, Rachel interrupted, holding up her hand. I'm done taking breaths. I came here in good faith. I came here to talk about something that could genuinely help children. And I've been met with nothing but cynicism and nastiness. From someone who, quite honestly, should know better. Denise stood up now, too, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. Should know better? Let me tell you something, Rachel. I've interviewed hundreds of celebrities. Thousands. And I can spot a phony a mile away. You're not as genuine as you think you are. Based on what? Rachel demanded. Based on the fact that I came on your show? That's your evidence? You don't know me. You don't know anything about my life or what drives me. You've made assumptions based on absolutely nothing. Janet Street Porter finally stood as well, positioning herself between the two women. Okay, this has gone far enough. Denise, you need to apologize. This has gotten completely out of hand. Apologize? Denise scoffed. For what? For doing my job? This isn't your job, Janet said firmly. Your job is to facilitate interesting conversations, not to bully guests. Bully? Denise's voice reached a new pitch. I am not a bully. I am honest. There's a difference. Rachel shook her head, gathering her belongings from beside her chair. You know what? I don't need this. I really don't. I came here to help shine a light on an issue that affects thousands of families, and instead, I've been subjected to this. Whatever this is. Nadia Sawalha reached out. Rachel, Please don't go. Not everyone here feels the way Denise does. I know that, Nadia, and I appreciate you, Rachel said, her voice softer now. I appreciate all of you trying to make this okay, but it's not okay. And I won't sit here and be disrespected like this. I have too much respect for myself, and for the work I do. Denise crossed her arms. Oh, so now you're going to storm off? Very mature, Rachel. Really shows your commitment. Rachel turned to face Denise directly, her eyes blazing. My commitment? I've given years to this cause, Denise. Years. I've held fundraisers. I've lobbied politicians. I've sat with parents who cried because their children finally felt seen. What have you done lately besides tear people down on national television? I provide a platform, Denise said defensively. This show gives people like you a voice. A voice? Rachel let out a bitter laugh. You haven't let me have a voice. You've talked over me, dismissed me, questioned my integrity. That's not giving someone a voice. That's silencing them. Kay Adams stood now too, her expression pained. Rachel, I am so sorry about this. This isn't how things were supposed to go. I know, Kay, Rachel said gently, and I don't blame you. But I can't stay here. I won't. Denise threw her hands up. Fine. Leave then. Run away. That's what people do when they can't handle a little scrutiny. Scrutiny? Rachel's voice was incredulous. You call that scrutiny? That was a character assassination, Denise. And for what? What did you gain from this? Did it make you feel powerful? Did it make you feel better about yourself? The studio was dead silent, except for the sound of Rachel's microphone being unclipped. Every crew member, every audience member, sat frozen, watching this unfold. Janet Street Porter spoke up again. Denise, you owe her an apology. A real one. Denise's lips pressed into a thin line. I don't apologize for speaking my mind. There's speaking your mind, and there's being needlessly vicious, Janet said. This was vicious. Rachel picked up her bag, slinging it over her shoulder. You know what the saddest part of all this is? I actually used to respect you, Denise. I used to think you were brave for saying what you thought. But there's nothing brave about punching down. There's nothing brave about attacking someone who came here with good intentions. That's just being mean for the sake of being mean. Oh, spare me the speech, Denise muttered. But Rachel wasn't done. No, I won't spare you, because maybe someone needs to tell you this. Your honesty, as you call it, is just cruelty dressed up as authenticity. You hide behind this persona of being the one who tells it like it is, but really, you're just someone who enjoys making others feel small. And that's not something to be proud of. Nadia Sawala had tears in her eyes. Rachel, I'm so sorry. Don't be sorry, Nadia, Rachel said, her voice gentler. None of this is your fault. You've all been lovely. Well, most of you. She turned back to Denise one final time. I hope whatever you got out of this was worth it. I hope belittling me and my work made your day better. Because you've certainly made mine worse. And more importantly, you've missed an opportunity to actually help spread awareness about something that matters. But I suppose that was never really the point, was it? Denise opened her mouth to respond, but Rachel held up her hand. Save it. I'm done. And with that, Rachel Shenton walked off the Loose Women set, her head held high, despite the fury and hurt written across her face. The panel sat in stunned silence. Denise still standing with her arms crossed, the other three women looking at each other in disbelief. Kay Adams turned to the camera, her voice shaky. We're going to take a quick break. But as the cameras cut, the damage was done. What should have been an uplifting conversation about helping deaf children had turned into a masterclass in how not to treat a guest. Rachel had come with nothing but good intentions, ready to use her platform for something meaningful. Instead, she'd been met with suspicion, accusations, and outright hostility. Nadia Sawalha immediately turned to Denise. What was that? What on earth was that? I was doing my job, Denise said, but her voice lacked its earlier conviction. Your job isn't to attack people, Janet said sharply. Your job is to have conversations. That wasn't a conversation. That was an ambush. She couldn't handle a few tough questions, Denise argued weakly. Those weren't tough questions, Kay said, her voice tight with anger. Those were accusations. You accused her of being fake, of using charity for publicity, of not really caring. Based on what? Your gut feeling? That's not journalism, Denise. That's just cruel. Denise looked around at her fellow panelists, perhaps realizing for the first time that she'd gone too far. I was just trying to keep it real. Well, congratulations, Janet said coldly. You just ran off one of the kindest, most genuine people we've ever had on this show. Feel good about that. In the corridor outside the studio, Rachel leaned against the wall, taking deep breaths. A producer approached her cautiously. Rachel, I'm so sorry about what happened in there. That shouldn't have... Rachel held up her hand. It's fine. Well, it's not fine, but it's done. I just want to leave, please. Of course. Can we call you a car? Already sorted, thank you. As Rachel waited for her ride, she pulled out her phone and stared at it for a moment. She had come here to help, to spread a message, to make a difference, and instead, she'd been treated like her motives were suspect, like her years of work meant nothing. Back in the studio, the tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. The other panelists weren't speaking to Denise, who sat rigidly in her chair, staring straight ahead. A stage manager approached. We're back in 30 seconds, ladies. Kay looked at Denise. You need to address this when we come back. Address what? Denise said, but her voice was quieter now. What you just did, Kay said firmly. You can't just pretend that didn't happen. The cameras came back on, and Kay took a deep breath. Welcome back. As you saw before the break, our interview with Rachel Shenton took an unexpected turn. Rachel has left the studio. Nadia jumped in. And I just want to say, for the record, that Rachel Shenton has been doing incredible work with the deaf community for years. Her commitment is real. Her passion is genuine. And she didn't deserve what just happened. Janet nodded. Absolutely. Sometimes on this show, we have robust discussions. That's part of what we do. But there's a line between robust discussion and personal attack. And I think that line was crossed today. All eyes turned to Denise. The host shifted uncomfortably in her seat. Look, I ask the questions that need to be asked. That's always been my approach. But do they need to be asked? Kay pressed. Rachel has a proven track record. She's put her money where her mouth is. She's dedicated years to this cause. What exactly were you questioning? Denise's jaw tightened. I just think it's important to hold celebrities accountable. Accountable for what? Nadia asked, her voice rising. For trying to help? For using her platform for good? What exactly did Rachel do wrong here? The silence stretched out, uncomfortable and heavy. Janet leaned forward. I've known Rachel for years. She's one of the most down-to-earth, genuine people in this industry. What happened today wasn't journalism. It wasn't holding anyone accountable. It was just mean. Denise's face flushed again. I didn't mean for it to escalate like that. But it did, Kay said. And now a woman who came here to talk about helping children has left upset and probably feeling like she was attacked for caring about something. How is that okay? The weight of what had happened seemed to finally settle on Denise's shoulders. Her defiant posture slumped slightly. Maybe I came on too strong. Maybe. Nadia's eyebrows shot up. Denise, you accused her of using deaf children for publicity. You called her work performative. You questioned everything about her motives without a shred of evidence. That's not coming on too strong. That's crossing a line. The remaining minutes of the show were strained. The easy chemistry the panel usually shared, completely gone. When they finally signed off, Denise remained seated, while the others immediately left the set. What had started as a simple interview about charity work had exploded into something much bigger. Rachel had handled herself with grace and dignity, refusing to be diminished by someone who seemed determined to tear her down. She had stood up for herself, for her work, and for the children she was trying to help. As Rachel's car pulled away from the studio, she looked back at the building one last time. She had come to help spread a message of inclusion and accessibility. Instead, she'd been given a harsh reminder that not everyone operates from a place of goodwill. But she also knew that her work would continue, that the children she helped would still benefit, regardless of what had happened on that stage. Inside the studio, the crew packed up equipment in near silence. The audience members filed out, whispering among themselves about what they'd just witnessed. The other panelists gathered their things, shooting occasional glances at Denise, who sat alone at the desk. Kay approached her finally. "You really hurt her, you know? And for what?" Denise didn't answer. Perhaps she didn't have an answer. Or perhaps she was finally realizing that being brutally honest and being brutal were not the same thing. The interview that was supposed to shine a light on an important cause had instead become a showcase of how quickly things can go wrong when someone decides that tearing others down is more important than building them up. Rachel had come in good faith, with open heart and clear intentions. She had left with her dignity intact, but her faith in the platform shaken. The contrast couldn't have been starker. On one side, a woman who had dedicated years of her life to helping children feel seen and heard. On the other, a host who had spent mere minutes trying to tear that work apart without cause or justification. As the studio lights dimmed and the day's filming came to an end, one thing was abundantly clear. Rachel Shenton had come to talk about giving voices to those who feel voiceless. Instead, she'd been forced to use her own voice to defend herself against unwarranted attacks. And she had done so with strength, conviction, and unwavering belief in the work that mattered to her. The heated clash had revealed something important. When you lead with genuine care and passion, no amount of cynicism can truly diminish that. Rachel had proven that sometimes walking away isn't weakness. Sometimes it's the strongest thing you can do. She refused to let someone else's need for drama overshadow the real issues at hand. She refused to engage in a mud-slinging match when there were children who needed advocates, not arguments. The empty studio stood silent now, the scene of an interview gone wrong, a conversation that never should have turned into a confrontation. But the work Rachel was passionate about would continue. The children she fought for would still have her in their corner. And somewhere, Rachel Shenton was already planning her next move, undeterred by someone who had tried to make her feel small. Because that's what real commitment looks like. Not grand gestures on television sets, but continuing the work even when it's hard. Even when you face opposition. Even when someone tries to question your very heart and soul. Rachel had shown up with authenticity, and when that authenticity was challenged without basis, she had chosen to preserve it rather than compromise it for the sake of staying in a hostile environment. The Loose Women set would host many more interviews, many more discussions, many more debates. But this particular clash would be remembered, not because of the drama itself, but because of what it revealed about character, about integrity, and about what happens when someone who genuinely cares comes face to face with someone more interested in controversy than conversation. Rachel's exit had been more than just a walk-off set. It had been a statement, a refusal to accept being treated poorly, a defense of her work and the people she worked for. And in that moment, as she unclipped her microphone and gathered her things, she had shown exactly the kind of strength and conviction that made her advocacy work so powerful in the first place. The cameras had captured it all. The accusations, the defense, the escalation, and the exit. But what they couldn't capture was the impact this would have. The conversations it would start. The questions it would raise about how we treat people who dedicate themselves to helping others. The reflection it might inspire about the difference between healthy skepticism and baseless cynicism. As the building emptied and the day drew to a close, the weight of what had transpired lingered in the air. An opportunity for good had been derailed. A chance to amplify an important message had been squandered. And a kind-hearted person had been pushed to their limit, not by tough questions, but by questions that should never have been asked in the first place. The makeup room where Rachel had prepared just hours earlier now sat empty, her chair still slightly turned from when she'd gotten up. The coffee she'd been offered still sat on the counter, barely touched. Everything about the space spoke to the normalcy of how the day had started, the calm before the storm. In the green room, where guests usually waited before and after their appearances, Rachel's signed photo for the wall remained, unsigned. The producers had planned to ask her after the interview, assuming it would be a lovely, uplifting conversation that she'd be happy to commemorate. The production team gathered in the control room, reviewing what had happened. The director sat with her head in her hands, knowing that what should have been a feel-good segment had turned into something else entirely. The audio engineer, who had captured every word of the confrontation, shook his head slowly. Back at her home, Rachel sat in her living room, still processing what had happened. Her phone buzzed constantly with messages from friends and colleagues who had been watching. Words of support flooded in, people telling her she had handled it perfectly, that Denise had been out of line. But Rachel didn't feel graceful. She felt angry. She felt hurt. She felt like an opportunity to help had been wasted because someone had decided to make it about something else entirely. All those children she wanted to talk about. All. The awareness she hoped to raise, completely overshadowed now. Meanwhile, across town, Denise sat in her own home, the events of the day replaying in her mind. Her phone was buzzing too, but with different kinds of messages. Some people praising her for not holding back, for asking the hard questions, but others, many others, calling her out for what they saw as bullying. She thought about Rachel's words. There's a difference between being honest and being cruel. The sentence echoed in her head. Was there truth to that? Had she crossed a line between legitimate questioning and personal attack? In the heat of the moment, it had felt righteous, felt like she was doing what needed to be done. But now, doubt crept in. The other panelists had group texted without her, she noticed. Kay, Nadia, and Janet were discussing what had happened, and Denise wasn't included in the conversation. That stung more than she wanted to admit. These were her colleagues, her friends in many cases, and they had shut her out completely. She poured herself a glass of wine and sat on her sofa, staring at the wall. Tomorrow there would be meetings. There would be discussions about what had happened and how to move forward. There would probably be damage control. But tonight, there was just the uncomfortable realization that maybe, just maybe, she had let her desire to create a moment override everything else. As both women settled into their evenings, processing the day in their own ways, the loose women's set sat dark and empty. The chairs where they had sat were pushed in neatly. The lights were off. The cameras were powered down. But the impact of what had happened there would ripple outward for days, weeks, months, maybe even longer than anyone could have anticipated or imagined. Because sometimes a single conversation can reveal so much about who we are and what we value. And this conversation had revealed a stark contrast between someone trying to build something meaningful and someone more interested in tearing it down, between authentic passion and performative skepticism.